So after showing you that beautiful kind of view of the sea and also the pier over there, I'm going to tell you a story from my past which may have some lessons for you in remembering your past, dealing with your past, thinking about your past and what you're going to do with it, and maybe a lesson in a kick at the bum to get things done and not waste time. It may be just permission just to think about things you haven't thought about before, which have maybe been too painful, or maybe it just hasn't been the right time to think about them. So I'm on the Essex coastline at the moment. This is Clacton-on-Sea. Behind me is Clacton-on-Sea, just down there is Clacton-on-Sea. And I'm going to have a walk down to the pier in a bit anyway and just have a wander around. And the last time I was here was 1993. And for a timestamp on this, it's now 2021. So it's been quite a few years since I've been down here. And the last time I was down here, I was with a friend of mine, Ollie. And Ollie was studying at Colchester University, which is just down the coast. I can't remember what he was studying, which is really bad, but I can't remember what he was studying. And he came here in '93 as a university student, all excited just to kind of take on the world. And I remember coming down here in November. We came down to kind of spend some time with him over a weekend, to go out and party, to drink, to do all the things that we were doing age. We were 20 at the time, so he waited a couple of years before he went off to university, and we wanted to do all the things which we wanted to do as kind of students and young men. Saturday we went out, Friday night we went out, Saturday night we went out, we got very, very drunk. Sunday we got up and we came down to Clacton-on-Sea. Now we never made the beach, but we found some kind of outcrop to look out onto the sea. And it was the bleakest, windiest, wettest day that you could ever go for. Rain was sideways, trees were almost being blown over, it was freezing. We lasted about 2 minutes, then we went sod this and we went. And then I drove home that day. So what I've seen today is a very, very different view of Clacton-on-Sea. And that's quite nice, actually. And maybe there's been a little bit of me which has been reluctant to come out of here because of memories, as I'll get onto in the story in a moment. Ollie came back for Christmas, had Christmas back in the Midlands with us. We all got together, we all had a really good time. And then he went back to university in the January. That was on the Monday. It was a Monday in January, probably second week of January. On the Friday, I get a phone call off a friend of mine to say, just sit tight. I want you to sit down. I've got some news for you, which is a bit shocking. Okay, so I sat down. I was still at my parents' house at the time, and I remember exactly where I was sat when I got this message. My friend told me that Ollie had died. And it's hard to describe the emotions that you go through when anyone dies. But somebody of 20 years old dying is not right. It's not right. And what had happened is he'd had a hole in his heart from birth, which had been given the all clear about four years before when he was 16. But it obviously was a problem, and that day in January of 1994, it was his time. It was his time to go. We went out that night and we celebrated his life in probably the only way we knew how at that point, which was copious amounts of alcohol, and embarrassingly for me, I got arrested and ended up in the cells for the night. It was a very, very intense night. And probably in some ways that time and that experience was the beginning of probably about 12 years of really just wandering and really struggling with who I was, who I am, what I wanted from life. And I used anger a lot. I had relationships which I didn't do particularly well in. I moved backwards and forwards between various careers. At that point I went from computing to care to nursing, and then at the end of the 12 years I was studying podiatry. My health wasn't particularly good, my weight was up and down, and at the end of those 12 years I was 17.5 stone before I really did something about it. So that experience was the beginning of a real period. I smoked during that period as well. I wasn't a healthy lad at all, and it was a start of a period which wasn't particularly good for me. And I'm not saying for a moment that what happened to Ollie and Ollie's death was the catalyst. I think it was one of many things which are going on at the time, and it was just that compounding, boom, boom, boom. What's interesting is that I think about Ollie. I do think about him, even though it's been many years. And if I'm honest, and I feel guilty about this, I don't think about him enough. But over the last few weeks, I've had opportunities to think about him more. There's a reason that my firstborn is called Ollie, by the way. That's a very, very important part of honouring his memory. But there's been a couple of things which have taken me down the route of really thinking about him and thinking about that time. One is being here, obviously, because it's an opportunity to think about him and honour his memory and be here and see it in a different light to how I saw it in the November of 93. We did try and get down here in the early part of 1994, but snow stopped play. Unfortunately, we didn't get down here. The weather was awful. The other thing that has got me thinking about him was something I did with a friend of mine, a coach, Disco Dave, who did a music mapping session with me where essentially we take music, and we take music which represents loss, and we take music which represents a happy time and joy. And the piece of music which I brought up was a piece of music that was part of the playlist that I gave to Ollie. We used to send playlists to each other, and we used to kind of talk about music all the time. It was one of those real connecting things for us, was our music. And it was a piece of music which was on the playlist for his funeral. It's a song called Dixie Drugstore by a band called Grant Lee Buffalo, and I don't listen to them much now. They're not something I listen to a lot, but when I listen to that song, it takes me straight back to that place, and that's partly the aim of what Disco was doing with his coaching. And those two opportunities, the opportunity to be here, the opportunity to listen to that music, took me back to that time and gave me a chance to really honour his memory. There's a lot which pops up when I kind of sit and think about it, and you know, in true human style, I'm still processing through some of those things. You know, the grief of losing just such a lively, human, funny as fuck person that young, to have to speak, let's check my language on that one, to be honoured to speak at his funeral, and to feel the emotion which comes along at that point when you're doing a reading about someone and just being hit by it. The weight of how the weight of a coffin changes between going into a church for a ceremony and coming out. And nothing's changed just physically, but everything's changed. There's so much there, and there's so much which I still need to work through on that. But sitting here, there's a couple of very strong things which may be of use to you. These may help you, they may not. They may give you something to think about, they may not. But just being here in the moment, enjoying the sound of the ocean. I just hear that, even with the headphones on, I can hear the sound of the ocean. Just feeling a very light breeze from the sea. Yesterday it was a huge wind which was sandblasting me. And being able to just look at how blue everything is and how beautiful everything is, and feel the warmth of the sun. The opportunity to do that and think about Ollie is an immense honour. It really is. But maybe the thing which can really serve you is that it's important to be. It's important to actually honour the memory of people who you love, and it's important to just not waste time. And I realise sitting here now that there's been a lot of times where I have wasted time, and you can't buy that time back, where I haven't done the things that I should have done, and I know should is not the best word. I haven't done the things that would have really been fun at the time, or would have really been enjoyable or would have really changed things. But also saying the things that would have made a difference to me and other people. Or making a choice which would have made a difference to me and other people. And even that opportunity is still available to me now, it's available to you. I'm sure there's a lot more which will come out of this, and when I stop this video and I sit here for a bit and I just listen to more of the sea and look at the waves moving and have a walk down to the pier and go and find somewhere for breakfast, there'll be a lot more which pops up. And maybe there's something in this video which you can take away and go, yeah, that's really useful, and I do hope that there is something there for you. Even if it's almost 11 minutes or maybe almost 12 minutes by the time I finish talking, I've been able to sit down and listen to this while having a cup of tea, and it gives you a break in your day. Cool. But I've got some things to think about, and you can probably tell that I didn't know where this video was going to go, and you can probably tell that there's actually lots and lots going through my head at the moment which are really good thoughts and happy thoughts, and there's some really kind of interesting thoughts that I will process over time. But yeah, thanks for listening.